a hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentions, "Ashaddu nasi bala'an al-anbiya." The most tested people in the world are the prophets. But then he uses a different terminology, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to describe who else is tested, alayhi salatu wassalam. He says, ثُمَّ الْأَمْثَلْ فَالْأَمْثَلْ, and then those that are closest to them, those that are closest to them. Closest to them here is not referring to proximity of time. SubhanAllah, it's an amazing hadith when you compare it to another famous hadith where the Prophet ﷺ said, the best of generations are qarni, my generation. ثُمَّ الَّذِينَ يَلُونَهُمْ ثُمَّ الَّذِينَ يَلُونَهُمْ, and then those that followed, and then those that followed. That Allah has allocated righteousness disproportionately in this ummah, certainly in the first generations of Islam, with the pious predecessors. And the companions around the Prophet ﷺ are the best generation of Islam. So the best generation is my generation, and then that which follows immediately, and then that which follows immediately. Compare that to this hadith, where it's not about time. It's not about the proximity of generation. That the most tested of people are the Anbiya, are the prophets. ثُمَّ الْأَمْثَلْ فَالْأَمْثَلْ. It puts some perspective to what we're witnessing in the people of Gaza. When we say, who are these people? They don't feel quite real. Because I know that if I was tested with even a fraction of what they've been tested with, my collision rating would not be able to survive. I would crumble sooner. I don't think I would have made it that far with those circumstances. And so the proximity here is al-amthal fal-amthal. Those that are closest to the prophets in what? Al-ashraf. Fal-ashraf, the most noble, the most noble. The closest to the prophets in nobility, the closest to the prophets in character, the closest to the prophets in faith, can expect a disproportionality of test, a disproportionality of trial. And the Prophet ﷺ said, يُبْتَلَى النَّاسُ عَلَى قَدْرِ دِينِهِمْ. People are tested in accordance with their faith. And so the one who has stronger deen will face stronger tests. And the one who is weaker in faith will have weaker tests. You know, it kind of puts some perspective to that idea of لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. Allah does not burden a soul beyond its scope. Even though the primary intended meaning of this ayah is that the sharia, the legislation that we have, does not burden us beyond our scope. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us what is reasonable, what is practical, what doesn't push us beyond what is humanly reasonable while pursuing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, while pursuing the divine. But there's, of course, an implied benefit as well, that Allah does not burden a soul beyond its scope. But just because Allah doesn't burden a soul beyond its scope doesn't mean that Allah will not push you to the limits of your potential.